So I was able to read like Tom Clancy books after that and do that for enjoyment.
Nice.
We took a beach vacation that next summer, and I was under the canopy reading books while kids were out on the beach. So, um,
And is that a common thing for you
yes, the
today?
re-
Yeah, the reading.
yes,
Was it common before you did the
no,
course?
hell no.
I think I know exactly where you stand on that. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Tim Conway, and we're happy to bring you a new discussion today on Dyslexia Success Stories, talking about how much can you change with somebody who's actually over the age of 50. Now, from my background, for those of you who haven't been a part of this podcast before, I'm trained as a PhD neuropsychologist with a unique training background, both in pediatrics, neuropsychology in adults, and neuropsychology in geriatrics. But I also spent a decade working with the Federal Center of Excellence on neuro rehab, which means rewiring the brain, changing skills after brain damage. And then we're also peer review published in functional MRI imaging, peer review published in post-stroke rehab. And then we did 3 5-year NICHD funded studies of randomized controlled trials on prevention of reading deficits in 5-year-olds and also remediation of reading deficits in 8 to 10-year-olds. And we'll get back to some of that data a little bit later. Right now, we're just going to jump online with Mr. Scott Jones and let Scott share with you his background, his perspective, and talk about the treatment intervention we did to rebuild, strengthen these skills, and show that it's actually very possible to change reading accuracy, change spelling accuracy, and increase language processing, even when you're over 50, like Scott and I both are over 50. So I'm bringing on board Mr. Scott Jones. And Scott, pleasure to have you here. Thanks for joining us today. How are things
Thanks
going in
for having
Arkansas?
me. Thanks for having me.
All right. What's the weather like today in Arkansas? Got any good
It is
weather there?
clear, a little chilly. It's
All
nice.
right. Well, we've got the same in Florida. We woke up to like 45 degrees this morning. That's quite cold for Florida.
Yeah.
So give us a little background for yourself. When did you know that reading or spelling wasn't your strength? How soon did that come to your awareness? Because most adults are like, oh yeah, from like right away. Other adults, frankly, we've had students who were in the IB program before they realized I have a reading problem. We had students who finished Harvard and then realized I've got reading deficits. We've got students who are PhD, MD, surgeons who knew they had some struggles, but always just tried to work around it. But how about yourself? Give us your background, your history. When did you realize that reading and spelling were not your strong suits at that age?
Probably around second grade. My mom knew something was not right. Had had testing done. Was just not able to do what I needed to do in second grade. So I went back a grade.
Okay.
So or was held back. So repeated second grade, got after school tutoring, and the best at the time that we knew in North Little Rock, Arkansas,
Mm-hmm.
and basically had 2 or 3 years of that type of tutoring, and then that was it.
Okay.
But I knew I could not spell. It's like fifth grade. My grandmother lived with us. She would, you know, test the spelling words, would have me redo them all there. I get into class and it was all gone.
Yeah.
So there's probably a lack of rapid recall and memory. That's part of dyslexia. That I just memorizing, looking at something, writing stuff. That doesn't. It's not the way things sink in.
Yeah.
Even in fifth grade, I had a spelling test. I wrote cover sheet, but I did not write sheet. It was shit.
Oh.
And the teacher did not say anything about it because she knew my spelling was so atrocious.
She knew you didn't really mean it in a derogatory way.
Yes.
Oh boy. Yeah, but I'm sure she took notice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we like to point out that for adults who had dyslexia, some 30, 40 years ago or 50 years ago, in your and my case, There wasn't a lot of knowledge base back then. It was, hey, you know what? You're not college material. We should aim you towards plumbing, where you're a hands-on job of
Yeah.
carpentry or a hands-on job of some kind of labor field or something, some trade that maybe you could become a welder, because welders don't do a lot of work reading. They do if they have to learn new equipment and new training. It's not avoid or devoid of reading skills, but it's not the most common piece. So you've got those skills. You realize that they're, really not building at the same level, but there's not a lot people were doing for us back then.
Yeah, luckily my math skills and were just off the chart, and music skills, so I thrived in those areas and survived in the others.
Right.
No, in college I had to take bonehead English before I could take Comp 1 and 2, and a good friend of ours who was an English major basically helped me get through those things. I made a B in literature in college without reading any of the books because I went to the class lectures and took notes.
And real well.
So I found techniques around and to work around those and to minimize those weaknesses. But, in the computer industry, I would say half of my coworkers are probably dyslexic at some scale, maybe not as clobbered as some of us.
And how long did your spelling problems persist?
That they persisted until I took this course. So one of the things, funny stories is I've got patents under my name, which it takes 5-6 years for it to get them approved. They finally got approved in my yearly review. You have to put your accomplishments, and I put in 3 patents were approved, yada, yada. Meeting with my boss, it wasn't patents, it was patients. So I had 3 patients approved, and it's in the review system, and neither of us could get it corrected.
Right.
So it's in my permanent record that I had 3 patients approved. And we had a good laugh at it. But, when I, at work early on, if I had to send stuff out, I basically had some coworkers that I trusted and would read items. And they now understand why all my emails are bulleted, get right to the point.
Very short.
Very short. Think I'm just pain in the rear because I'm just being blunt, and it's just like, well, here's my idea. No elaboration, no nothing.
And what you and I know was you're trying to avoid making any spelling mistakes.
Yes.
So you use as few words as possible, try to make sure nobody knows that spelling is not your strength. It's actually, was quite difficult. In fact, your daughter, Rory, who had struggles herself, and let me back up. When did you realize that dyslexia was genetic? When did you get that knowledge base?
I got that knowledge when our third child, our youngest child, just again, first grade, second grade, was just not getting it. And my wife and I are working with the teachers and and the evaluators. Could this be dyslexia? Her dad's just clobbered with it, and through the process of advocating for her and finding systems for her, discovering, these things came from me and a little bit from my wife. And then just trying to figure out the systems in the school system, and that was a real journey.
Yeah, and what most people don't understand is dyslexia, or any type of developmental difficulty, whether it's dyslexia, whether it's dyscalculia, which are the math struggles, or it's dysgraphia, which is trouble with spelling and written composition and paragraph writing. Those are developmental difficulties that are brain-based and neurobiological, and they're not in the purview of educational training. Educators are not trained as developmental specialists. Like, how does the brain build reading skills? That's not part of the curriculum of a graduate degree or even a bachelor's degree in education. And so we've put teachers at a real disadvantage to say, pretend to be a brain scientist and figure out what's going on with this kid's brain because they're not learning their letters and sounds. And it puts parents at a disadvantage in that they're expecting the teachers know. The teachers know that they don't know what's going on, and they randomly tried a myriad of things that might help. And typically, in your daughter's case, all the things they tried, how did that work out?
So we've had from third and fourth grade, we brought in our own specialists that would work with her during school. And, that really helped her at that point. But we realized in 10th grade, it really didn't fix the problem. It was, it didn't fix her spelling. It didn't fix her phonological awareness. Um, so in 10th grade, she had to walk. Extra time, there wasn't enough time in the calendar to do the work. We had her drop out of AP chemistry, and the chemistry teacher was like, "She's one of my smartest," and said, "We understand, but you're not doing any accommodation. You're not helping her. You're just making it harder, and it's not worth it."
Yeah.
To go through that struggle. And that's when we found the Now program and searching, what do we do now? We're out of runway. It's 10th grade.
Yeah.
We don't have time for another 3-year program. The program in elementary really didn't help her spelling and didn't rewire her brain. And so that's when we found the Now program, and we kind of like, oh, crap, okay, let's do this. We don't have time to play around, and it'll either work or not work. Because everything you said about how it would work and how quickly it would work, we're going, no, that can't be right. And so she came to your clinic and did 6 hours a day during the summer for 8 weeks. And when she was done, she was at the end of the day, she was toast. She's like, my wife came to the with us like midway through and said, "Y'all aren't saying anything." Said, "She's toast. She wants zero interaction. Her brain is tired." But by the fifth, 6th week, she was spelling 6, 7 syllable words.
Yeah.
And it was just like, what? How is that possible? But and I like the thing that you made her repeat and kind of review. I am not dumb.
Yeah.
My brain is a Ferrari brain. My IQ is huge.
Yeah. She has a powerful IQ.
And you're just going up a 60% incline.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put you on a flat and see how fast you can go.
Too fast. There's too much load on that engine. You're burning the fuel. It's not working as well. And we're not giving you the right octane fuel. So it can't even produce the power it's designed to produce. It's kind of an automotive analogy to brain processing, especially when we talk about dyslexia and learning difficulties. So I'm going to put a post out to the different feeds, Scott, so people, if they want to, your daughter and wife already did a podcast with me.
Yeah.
We talked in more detail about their outcomes. So I'll put that link out there so folks can take a look at it and watch that in detail. But come back to you as an adult. You're in your 50s. You see your youngest starting to excel and soar. For the first time, her reading skills are becoming more accurate in her ability to sound out words, to read, sound out words to spell. And there was a joke between you and her about your spelling in text messages. What was that joke?
Well, I spelled salad. SALID.
Pretty phonetic.
And she's like, "Really? You need to take this course. You're as bad as I was." And I was like, "Yes."
And it means, ironically, we had now empowered her phonological processor enough, her reading and spelling skills enough, that she actually, for the first time, realized you're making spelling mistakes.
Yeah.
Prior up to that point, she probably didn't even recognize it because she was making spelling mistakes too. So it's really hard to tell what's right, what's wrong. So as an adult, because most adults I talk to, they're like, I really don't want to go there. I hated school. It's a traumatic experience, all the failure. And you yourself said, yeah, if you get held back, it's even more traumatizing. I can get by good enough. I've worked around it. I don't do a lot of spelling. I do speech to text. I do this, I do that. And I'm like, yeah, that's all good, well and done, except for when you can't use speech to text in something that you have to do in front of peers or in front of a crowd, or when you can't use a scanning pen because you're driving down the road trying to read, highway signs about where's your turn, things like that. So two things. What was your decision point, why you decided to go ahead and do that Now Foundations for Speech, Language, Reading, Spelling course, which is our evidence-based. We did 3 NIH studies on that program, proved it's highly effective, not only for kids, but we proved it works really well to rebuild reading skills in adults who've had brain damage, which, just to be clear, that's 1,000 times more complicated than helping you, because despite what your wife might say, there's no evidence of brain damage. You got all the wiring there. It's just a matter of how efficient are the parts communicating. So what convinced you to do it, and how did you feel about taking that plunge? Did your anxiety go up?
Oh, yeah, it went up. It was basically, our youngest kind of saying, you need to take this course, her noticing everything that she was doing in me, and my wife prodding me to do that. So yes, my anxiety went up heavily to take that, but we decided, you can do it online. Um, you can do it in the clinical setting, which is our youngest did. Um, so I, I decided, well, let's do this. What could I do if I had these skills?
And what did you think you could do? Because God, you'd already done a lot. You're very accomplished in your field in IT and computers. You've got some patents under your name as well. You've got a powerful job. I mean, what is it that you felt was going to benefit you by at 54 taking on this new challenge and hoping it actually worked this time when in the years past, all through your school and never got any better? Why would you think it's going to change now?
Well, I've risen up in the ranks, and I'm basically one of the top architects at our company. And what does that entail? It entails me, drawing pictures of how a new system should lay out, putting in writing what the design should be, communicating up the stack to upper leadership, to to the business owners of it, and then to the actual developers. So it's the perfect storm. My career's moved me to this point, and it's all about communication.
And it's not all going to be just verbal.
Yes.
It's got to be some in writing. It's got to require more reading on your part as well. So
Yes.
you've risen to a point to where those skills are really necessary, and the workarounds aren't going to work as well.
Yeah. It slows everything down.
Yeah.
And and I still, if I'm doing a mass email
Right.
that goes out to like my whole division, I got some proofreaders
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
clarity and for understanding. But other than that, my coworkers and that, I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah. Now your wife wants to throw in a comment here that she finds it really frustrating when parents don't want to get their child help because they figured out some workarounds. Johnny's doing okay. He's got accommodations. He's got, they expect less of him. He doesn't have to read the same books the other kids read, or he doesn't have to do all the spelling words in elementary school the other kids do. And that's all wonderful for decreasing Johnny's stress, but it's not preparing him for life. How's he going to be able to be independent at his full potential if he's always dependent on technology or dependent on finding an employer who's going to, give him accommodations or work around his difficulties? And despite some other groups who are saying, yeah, let's just teach the employers how to accommodate dyslexia. Well, one, there's not a, carte blanche, every dyslexic is like this and needs these accommodations kind of approach. And two, dyslexia is not blindness. It actually can be drastically improved. We really don't know much about changing blindness or changing, you're born with, poor hearing or you're born deaf. we have a lot less to do for those conditions. Dyslexia is not the same as those conditions that do need ADA supports, and environmental supports and accommodations. Dyslexia is basically just the inefficient wiring of how the brain's communicating and how the brain's building those early speech skills. And that wiring can change. And as you're explaining, even at 54, that wiring could change.
Yep.
So what was it like when you started this program? And let me explain to the listeners. This is not a phonics program. Phonics goes to letters first and then tries to reverse go down to the sounds of the letters. We call that reverse engineering. It's backward science. Nobody learns letters first and then learns the sounds of English. That's not how anybody grew up. That's not how anybody's brain works. So it's a misguided attempt to change reading skills by going to letters and coming down to the sounds. Everybody's brain in a spoken language builds the speaking skills first, how they hear the sounds. They actually see their mom or dad or their parents' mouth moving. They work to get their mouth to move and make the same sound. So we know the neuropsychology of early literacy skills has nothing to do with the letters. It's all about these sensory inputs, building those speech processors. And I give all that science background to then say, Mr. Jones had to learn 15 funny little pictures of the mouth. And we have to usually explain to most adults on the front end, this looks childish, but we hope that you've seen the movie Karate Kid. When the sensei is making him put wax on his car and does wax on this way, wax off this way. And the kid's like, I'm not waxing your car. And he's like, wax on, wax off. And he knew he was using a funny activity or just an unusual activity to train an essential part of karate. We then explain to adults like you, Scott, but again, be interesting to hear your initial thoughts about it. Now, granted, you'd seen your daughter make tremendous progress, so you have a little bit of advantage there. But for some of the adults who are listening, they have not seen anybody get any better, and they've never gotten any better. And we say to them, we're going to teach you 15 pictures of the mouth, and it covers every speech sound in the entire language. Someone look at us like, I do not have a speech problem. I can articulate all my sounds. Why am I going to do this?
Can you actually hear all the sounds?
Yes.
Because it and oh my God. That was my weakness. And, I did have the advantage of knowing that the program worked. So
right.
It's like, okay, I'm going to do this. And you don't proceed with your lessons until you master the skill.
Right.
And so if you have problems in an area, the next day, they're coming after you different ways on that skill.
Yep.
And different ways and more ways until you master it. And being able to hear the difference
right. And to say it.
And say it.
Yeah.
And
to read it and to spell it. It's all those pieces coming together.
Yeah. So that was like my Achilles heel. And it was just, all the different ways of coming after it. So you don't progress until you gain that skill. Now, the instructor had multiple ways of coming at things. So it wasn't the same, right. We're going to just redo this same way of attacking that problem.
Which is usually like memorization. We're not trying to drill you to memorize a name of a picture, drill you to memorize which pictures go with which sounds. Some programs do that, but you've missed how the brain is designed to work. The brain's designed to work by like a detective. What do I hear versus what do I see versus what's my mouth doing? And it's reasoning and problem solving from this multi-sensory combination. Now, the brain doesn't give a flip about how your fingers are wiggling when you're looking at sounds. Your brain does not care if you're touching, rice and making letters in rice. That has nothing to do with your brain being able to perceive the sounds. Those are memorization strategies. So you're describing a completely different approach, which is inherent in that Now Foundations program with that now.com or nowprograms.com online delivery system with a live instructor. They're really working to help build your perception of those inputs, the integration of those inputs, and build stronger ability to perceive the sounds. And we could say hear, but as you've learned now, it's actually not just hearing.
Yeah.
It's hearing, seeing, feeling, and moving. It's these four sensory systems that build that phonological awareness, that ability to perceive sounds, to better sound out words when you read, and to perceive and accurately break a word down into sounds to actually be able to spell them when you're trying to phonetically spell.
Yeah. So, it's bought in the system. It was an hour a day, and I was toast after an hour a day on that. And I don't know how my daughter did, 6 hours. I think about 4 hours of that was this, and then
Yes.
some occupation, some sensory.
Yep, that OT, occupational therapy piece, is about 2 hours a day. When you're in
Yeah.
the medical clinic, it's called the Morris Center. And folks who are viewing can learn more about the Morris Center at themorriscenter.com. It's a transdisciplinary team of OT and speech and psychologists and educators who are all cross-trained to work together in a high-intensity, high-delivery model. Scott, do you remember how many hours it took you to finish that Now Foundations for Speech, Language, Reading, and Spelling program to really build that better phonological system and then build the better sounding out skills and
I
spelling skills?
started in September, I believe, and ended in December.
Yeah. So just under about 4 months, right around close to
Yeah.
about 4 months of time.
And that's
And
1 hour a day, 5 days a week.
yeah. And for you, it was less than 90 sessions.
Yeah.
So in less than 90 hours, just like you said, 1 hour a day, about 45, 50 minutes of your time, 10 minutes of the instructor planning and note taking, and 5 days a week. But did you understand why we were doing it 5 days a week?
It's getting that repetition and that wiring in there, and not, you know, working those pathways.
Yeah. And did you feel the brain drain you're talking about, like with your daughter, where you could tell you just been put through some mental
Oh yeah,
gymnastics?
yes, and most of the time I did it. I tried to do it in the afternoon, but there's sometimes I did it in the morning first thing, and it's just like, okay, I got to go to work after this.
And so it's effortful in the beginning because you're making new brain connections, the visual sides connecting with the speech language side, which connecting with the cognition, kind of like the conductor of the orchestra part of the brain, and you're building new connections, and not with adults, but with adults who've had brain damage or with children. We have actual published fMRI studies showing changes in the brain activity pattern so that the dyslexic who used to struggle, once we've done this developmental scientist approach, where you're building the speech processor first, then you go to the letters and sounds second, then you go to sounding out words to read third. There's a whole developmental hierarchy. When you do that, then the brain wiring changes and the brain activity on fMRI of somebody who has a dyslexia, and now they've remediated the dyslexia. They don't meet the criteria for reading accuracy problems. They no longer struggle with reading fluency. They no longer struggle with reading comprehension. Then their brain activity pattern in the fMRI machine is identical to a person who doesn't have reading problems. You've literally rewired your brain. That would be the neurological, neuropsychological explanation of why you felt, quote, brain fatigue at the end of those sessions. So, but think back to those mouth pictures. What was it like learning those pictures? Is it condescending? Is it frustrating? Is it annoying? Or what did it feel
No,
like?
it wasn't condescending. I mean, they explained why we're doing this and how it was going to be very programmatic or systematic, building on each other. Being a math guy, that's probably why I did well in math, because it's a very systematic way of teaching. This skill adds to this skill, adds to this skill. So, going back to the basics and understanding the sounds and getting that foundational work.
Yeah.
I didn't. I mean, I was very happy with the program and the approach the instructor did with an adult.
Yeah.
Now, some of the things they have to do with adults is we've seen a lot of words.
Yeah, that's true.
So there are
Memorized a
nonsense.
bunch
Yes.
or tried to. Yeah.
Yes. So there are nonsense words. Our oldest daughter did this herself, paid for it herself. She's out in her career, and she has an excellent memory. So if she's seen a word,
Yeah.
but she didn't have these skills, the phonological awareness skills that were needed. So
And so was she finding workarounds as a young 20-something-year-old
she was
out
finding workarounds. She had some accommodations, you know, she on that, but it's helped her. The good thing about her is her memory is so good. Where Rory and myself have slow recall,
Mm-hmm.
so you know just memorizing stuff didn't work.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So, but she was very happy with it, and she paid for it herself as an adult, and just like, way to go.
Now, did she do that before you did it, or did she do
She
that?
did it before.
Okay.
So yeah, I had 2 out of 3 kids that were saying, "Hey, you need to take this."
Because they had done it themselves.
Yes.
They both had dyslexia or reading deficits, whether
Yes.
they're diagnosed or not, it's irrelevant. If you have reading problems, it's going to be called a dyslexia. It means poor accuracy or poor speed or poor comprehension of reading. Those are the only 3 criteria needed for a diagnosis of dyslexia. If you have the diagnosis, great. We know what to do about it. This is a evidence-based program, scientifically tested and proven to be effective for that nowprograms.com interactive online group. But if you don't have the diagnosis, you have the option to spend the money or not spend the money as an adult, because the diagnosis isn't really going to change what we do. If you know you can't spell and you know you're not reading well, we know the number one cause is going to be that ability to sound the words out accurately and to sound the words out to spell. So the testing for adults is really quite optional, because we're not trying to qualify for some school service or some school accommodation. And in many cases, we tell families, well, you can spend $3,000 to $5,000 doing a bunch of testing, or you can just spend that money towards strengthening the skills and remediating the deficit so that it doesn't struggle quite so much. Now, we did do a little screening with you, and you may or may not remember that. We
Yes.
measured your phonological processing on a nationally normed, age-appropriate test. And do you remember where your phonological skills came in compared to your same age peers?
I think I was at 6th grade.
23rd percentile. Let's describe it that way. You're in the
Okay.
bottom 25% of folks your age.
Yeah.
But yet we know your IQ is way over here. It's on the higher end. So you've got phonological skills down here, IQ up here. Then we see this gap where things aren't lining up. Then when we finished the program, you made about 30 to 40 percentile points gain, which means now you're smack dab average, heading towards the upper average in those skills in less than about 4.5 months.
Yep.
And what we know from research is, and we actually did this research with adults with brain damage too, and the brain damage caused them to lose their reading skills, that 1 month later, 6 months later, a year later, the skills aren't gone. We've stopped the instruction, but because we weren't doing a memorizing phonics program, we weren't doing multisensory memorization, which is the most common approach from educators, we are doing neural rewiring, developmental speech processing training from a hierarchical system of a scientifically proven program. And so we know that once we've built that wiring and strengthened that wiring and you're using it, and all the research shows it, the skill just keeps getting stronger and stronger after the instruction has stopped. What do you think? Have you lost all the skills we built for you before?
No, we haven't. So,
and how many years ago did we do this instruction? We actually didn't even bring that up.
this 4 years ago.
Yeah, it's 2021. So we just passed 3 years.
Yeah.
You're heading into going to be the 4th year next year. So over 3 years ago, you did this work. This isn't something we just finished yesterday.
Correct.
And it's important for the viewers to understand that is we went in, did 4 months of work to empower your reading and spelling skills by first empowering your language processing, phonological awareness skills. And then we took you all the way up through 5-syllable words. So you could easily sound out a 5-syllable word, easily spell a 5-syllable word, and read. We took you all the way up to college level reading material to the point where you're about 99% accurate when you're reading 1,000 and 2,000 word passages with your instructor.
So I was able to read like Tom Clancy books after that and do that for enjoyment.
Nice.
We took a beach vacation that next summer, and I was under the canopy reading books while kids were out on the beach. So
And is that a common thing for you
Yes.
today? Yeah, the reading.
Yes.
Was it common before you did the
No.
course?
Hell no.
I think I know exactly where you stand on that.
No.
Because
And
it
now,
wasn't a pleasurable thing. It wasn't pleasurable to read a Tom Clancy book, or you
no.
actually didn't even do it.
Yeah. And now, if I misspell a word and then I figure out the right spelling, I'm looking at it and I'm going, I've never been pronouncing this word correctly.
Yeah.
And once I start pronouncing the word correctly, I can spell it.
Exactly.
So when I do misspell a word, I figure it out, I look at it and get the right spelling. I know why I misspelled it.
Right.
And, and it's like I was trying to come up with, even say the word provocative, because I was doing that in a couple emails, expecting, trying to trigger a response. But I could not come up with that, with even being able to articulate
Right.
provocative. I finally figured out, the right spelling, the word itself, and I'm going, well, because I wasn't saying it right. It was just,
Which also meant, like you said earlier, if you weren't perceiving it properly,
yeah,
your brain really wasn't making complete awareness of all the sounds in that word. And when we look at the science of the ear and words, it's a whole mishmash of acoustic properties coming into the ear that we call a word. There's no separation whatsoever. All the sounds are mashed together. But if you want to actually spell it, you got to do the reverse. You got to take that word and split it apart. And you got ah, and you got to be able to blend out each sound, and that aids the spelling system. But if your brain struggles to pull that word apart, which is the number one deficit in individuals with dyslexia, then you're going to be really at a huge disadvantage to spell it. And like you're doing now, you now can more easily access the word. You can more easily get your mouth to say it properly. You might slow it down to make sure you don't twist it around,
yeah,
but you can do it. And I'm not correcting you, and I'm not telling you how to say it, and your wife certainly isn't either. So that's the power of rewiring that phonological system. And as you keep using it more and more, then pretty soon provocative is effortless.
yeah.
You've really now wired it so well, so accurately, so efficiently, it doesn't take extra effort.
So I definitely have seen a huge difference.
Nice. And what would your advice be to folks who say all dyslexics have superpowers? There's 5 of them, and you don't have to have any of these remediations. We just want the workplace to expect less of your reading and spelling skills and focus on your strengths. What are your thoughts about that?
Definitely focus on your strengths, but what could you do if you had the skills?
Yeah. Or how much more?
How much more could you do? How easier could you get what's in your brain across to your colleagues, and be able to articulate that clearly, in written and spoken words? Because it has helped me actually just speak in front of people, um, to be able to articulate and what is going on in my brains, instead of just saying, do it, damn it. It's just like, being able to convey what you're thinking. So yeah, accommodations are great. But again, you need to build the skills, because it's capable. There's a system, you're capable of building the skills.
100%. And what most people don't understand is I'm a highly trained brain scientist. I'm peer reviewed published in stroke research and other, disorders of brain function, and peer reviewed published in dyslexia and how do you prevent it. And we've got studies showing that we can actually access kids age 5. And let me just throw up some of the slides real quick here too. And I'll give you a quick rundown, Scott, on what we did to be able to get there to help you. We published a study in 1991 on about 10 kids showing that we made 3 to 5 years of gain in their literacy skills in about 9 weeks. And then from that study, we went and did study with an adult who had severe reading deficits after a stroke. And in 1998, I published that study where I rewired his brain, rebuilt his skills, even though he'd had brain damage. And you'll see that we don't call that dyslexia, we call it alexia. It's reading problems due to acquired injuries. And so he made tremendous growth. And so those two studies together helped us get a big multi-million-dollar grant to do a prevention study with 5-year-olds. We screened 1,500 5-year-olds. We found the kids most at risk for becoming dyslexic, meaning their reading skills were not going to build and grow well. And then we did the treatment with one group of them, and the group that got our treatment, 91% of them passed kindergarten and first grade. The group that got the print to speech, which is the phonics programs, only 75% progressed. The group that just got some one-on-one doing whatever the teacher wanted, only 70% progressed. And the group that actually got no treatment, then 59% progressed and passed kindergarten and first grade. But notice that only the 91% was a big difference. These other three mean doing phonics at a 5-year-old is no more effective than doing nothing. So it doesn't give you the added advantage. And when we follow these kids at end of grade 2 and end of grade 4, all their instruction had stopped at grade 2, and this gold bar goes up higher at grade 4. The green bar goes up higher, or green line at grade 4, because we've rewired the phonological processors. We strengthen those abilities of speech to print, which means the phonological processors strengthen first. The written literacy skills come second, because that's how the brain typically does it. And then we even look to see, of those 5-year-olds who got that Now Foundations program, what percent of them were a 1 standard deviation above their peers, meaning more than a 50th percentile. And here you can see that 40% of those kids were rock stars in what's called word attack, which is sounding out words, more than a standard deviation above their peers, more than, about 15 standard score points. And their sight word skills, again, more about 45% of them were well above the other kids who got these interventions that really are not very effective. And their passage comprehension was stronger as well. And then we looked at which ones to see what percent were below 1 standard deviation. And we see we got the lowest who are below, we've got the highest who are above, and that's why that Now Foundations program is our premier program to actually prevent reading problems at age 5. We did another big study, $1 million project with 8 to 10-year-olds. And these kids got instruction in the same program as the 5-year-olds, but these kids were already in special ed. They were already falling behind. They were like what you experienced. These kids are getting retained. Was it grade 2 or grade 3 when you got held back?
2.
All right, so grade 2. And these kids are, these are 8, 9, and 10-year-olds, and some of them have already been held back, like you. And we know that holding a child back doesn't change their trajectory or the outcome. It actually harms their self-esteem. And one alarming statistic is 60% of kids who get held back a grade do not graduate from high school. That's such a negative impact on them, and actually doesn't change their skills. But for these kids, they came in scoring at the 5th percentile on the ability to sound out words, and in only 8 weeks of instruction. So this is a dosage study. We got them to the 45th percentile. 1 year later, the skills are still hovering above that 30th percentile, which means solidly on grade level. And 2 years later, their skills are starting to increase and get even stronger in just being able to sound out words. But like you said, too, the real reason for doing this is you've got to read more in your more advanced job. And so the purpose of reading is comprehension. And we measured reading comprehension with these kids as well. And they came in making no progress in 16 months of special ed, IEP, special ed services. It sounds great. Sounds like a great idea. We're going to give Johnny what he needs and Susie what she needs. But 95% of kids never leave special ed, which means that random guessing, random mixing up doesn't really change their trajectory. These kids, they moved up to the 30th percentile in just 2 months. 1 year later, their skills are even stronger. 2 years later, their skills are even stronger. And 40% of these kids, not 5, 40% left special ed. And then we now understand that we're down here working on your sounding out skills. That's what you did. That then helps empower your ability to learn more sight words. And then that also works to build better reading fluency. And if your brain is making good images and really holding on to content, comprehension goes right along with it. But let me break down that sounding out word piece, because it's more complicated than that. We had to go way down here in the bottom left side of that graph. We had to rewire that phonological processor, and the reading and spelling skills are way up here, up higher. And this is also a developmental model that says this is how it's typically done for a kid who doesn't struggle to read and spell. So we're following a developmental model to build that phonological processor first, and then going through these spoken language skills of expressive, receptive, semantic, syntax, then get to the written language skills. But even understanding the phonology, it breaks down even more. This is why you were doing all those crazy mouth pictures, Scott. We were working on your oral motor control of the sounds you're trying to produce and perceive, working on your awareness of which parts of the mouth, we call that somatosensory, feeling what parts of the mouth are doing the work. Because when you say "ba," you knew back then it was a lip popper, and "da" was a tongue tapper. And that immediately eliminates kids mixing up B's and D's, because schools and phonics programs aren't teaching this motor awareness piece that's so important that typical readers have built just from their language exposure at home. And then you worked on the acoustic input plus the visual input of looking at your mouth in the mirror or looking at these pictures. And we wired all those together to build your phonemic skills, to build better auditory memory, and to build better executive function with language as well. And then from there, we went on to, there's even more lower level pieces of phonology. And this is the stuff your daughter worked on with the OTs to build those skills. So there's a whole bunch of pieces that went into what you did and what we worked on. And those pieces were much more complicated in many ways, but it's a power of science behind it as well to help build those skills. So our question was, okay, what would you tell others about, adults and working on their skills? Your wife has got lots to share, because she's also, many people don't know, she's also a dyslexia advocate and has helped empower families and navigate these systems. So she's saying that many adults don't go out for promotions. They don't actually try to get those advancements, because then they're going to have to do more with skills they don't have. And then you feel like you're an imposter. I really shouldn't be here. I don't have the ability to be here. They're going to find out that I can't do these things. And my coworkers are going to find out that I can't spell. And unfortunately, we equate language skills with intelligence. It's not true, but that's what it seems like to other people as well. So that can be very a huge blow to self-esteem or to the male ego, however you want to describe it, and understanding, but we can actually change that.
Yeah, change. I mean, I wish we'd known about this and done this in second grade with Rory,
Yeah.
because kindergarten through 10th grade, a lot of anxiety was installed
Yeah.
in that child. And, that's why the clinical setting helped also, is to kind of retrain, I am not done.
Yeah. Work through all that traumatic experience, work through all those frustrating experiences, where it's almost, in some cases, the anxiety is secondary from all of the learning struggles. And when you remove the difficulty of the learning problems, then the brain relaxes. There's less anxiety, there's less tension, there's less worry and fear, and then you're better able to perform closer to your true potential.
Yeah.
So what's your advice to folks who are thinking about it, but maybe haven't been willing to take that leap yet of doing some online instruction? You pointed out that it's online. I'll go even further and say, and they can do it from home. It can be behind a closed office door. Nobody even has to know they're doing it. I mean, we've gotten so advanced in how we deliver these systems today. And one piece I'll plug right away too, and put a link to it as well, is we even now just released an app yesterday in the Apple Store. You can see it at lipletterland.com. And that app can help your 4, 5, and 6-year-old prevent any literacy difficulties, empower their reading and spelling skills, empower their letter knowledge, empower their awareness of all these neurology pieces of sounds. And we got the whopping price of $6.99 a month. Or if that's too much for you, pay the annual price of $49.99. You got it for a whole year. Or get grandma and grandpa to pay for it. But what's your advice to folks who are still kind of on the fence about what to do?
I mean, as an adult, it's just going to take stress off of you to, when you understand what's going on and how to process things and how to spell things. So it's well worth the effort and the time to do this, to improve. I mean, I'm a musician too, so always looking at trying to improve your performance, and that this is just a way to improve your performance at work, at home, just in general. So it's definitely worth the effort
And I'll go further to say, and we know that when you empower those skills, you might already have some superpower skills. You might already have some strengths that you think you're better at than any of your coworkers are, and that's great. But why not give yourself more strengths? Why not make reading a strength too, make spelling a strength too? And then you don't have to avoid those situations and do all these workarounds. Like I said in the very beginning of the show, we've had a PhD, MD, physicians, surgeons, physician specialists, heart surgeons who couldn't spell to save their life. And, they're all right, it doesn't matter, I'm a doctor. But at some point, they come back around and say, yeah, this is annoying. I'd like to change this. And our request is say, give us a call. We'll talk to you. We've got a team that talks to folks. You can email the nowprograms.com group. They'll give you information. They'll explain it to you. They'll understand all of the struggles you've had, and they can explain the science. Because, Scott, you're the epitome of a dyslexia success story 3 years ago at age 54. And I think just can't thank you enough for joining the show today, helping us share with people what's possible. And I just want to tell you thanks so much. And for those who are watching, we've got a whole list of these episodes. They're on our YouTube channel. Click to learn more about them. And thanks so much, Scott. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.